There we go. All right, so welcome to a beginner's guide to Mega Man. Brief disclaimer before we go forward. The more in-depth explanations in this presentation will be for the platformer entries of the series that more people are familiar with. The RPGs like Battle Network will be discussed, but not in as much detail. Now, so of course, what is Mega Man? It is a 38-year spanning franchise of action platformers from Capcom, which are different from their contemporaries by letting players choose whichever stage they want from a set of 8 in any order, rather than the more linear progression of other platformers from the time, like Mario. Players are rewarded for the experimentation by obtaining abilities from bosses that another may be weak to, and this cycle ultimately ends when all 8 of the main bosses are defeated. Debuting as Rockman in Japan, with rock coming from artist Keiji Inafune's love of music, and the man being more of an honorific describing the player character rather than a description of gender, so anyone can enjoy the game. Now, of course, there's a lot of games. Might be a bit intimidating to get into the series with so many different entries and incarnations. Luckily, I have divided everything into 6 understandable components timeline-wise to get the general idea of major iterations of the character, and you can jump into whatever era seems most appealing to you. So I've split this into 6 sections. We'll start with the Nintendo Entertainment System, then the jump to Super Nintendo and 16-bit consoles, the arrival of 3D consoles with the PlayStation, just kind of everything from the 2000s clumped together because we have a lot of different consoles, the kind of decline in the 2010s and kind of where we are now. And speaking of the Nintendo Entertainment System, we can start there with the classic series. Oh, that is not supposed to be there. Much better. So in 1987, Capcom released a new action platformer known as Rockman for the Nintendo Entertainment System. The name was changed to Mega over here because the original name was deemed too cutesy for American audiences. The story follows helper robot Rock selflessly choosing to become upgraded into Mega Man by Dr. Light to stop the nefarious plans of Dr. Wily using Light's creations. Unlike most platformers at the time, like Mario, it implemented a stage select system for players to choose whichever of Wily's robot masters they wanted to go up against, and each of them had a specific weakness which led to plenty of replayability. And to showcase weaknesses here, we're going to use our pal Gutsman here as a demonstration. This is the hyper bomb ability you get from Bomb Man. And, well, bombs are very effective against rocks, so it does more damage against Gutsman, thus rewarding experimenting with different stages. Now, sometimes this is a bit finicky when I get out of videos. Oh, hold on. Here we go. Unfortunately, despite decent reviews on the first game, sales were relatively low, and Capcom was tempted to pull the plug on the entire series. That was until the most iconic entry of the entire franchise was born, Mega Man 2 for the NES. Made entirely in the developer's spare time while working on other games as a passion project, it quickly became a financial hit and still to this day is one of the top sellers in the entire franchise. I think the highest selling now is 11. Anyways, the story follows Wily coming back with 8 of his own robot masters for another attempt at world domination, and once again, it's your job to stop him. Mega Man 2 takes what worked gameplay-wise in the first title and refines it into the classic formula we know today. 8 bosses, jumping and shooting at enemies, and using their abilities to discover secrets like the new energy tanks or to take them down. Even the bosses this time around were all fan creations from Japanese fans, and would continue to be until Mega Man 8. Now, of course, because Mega Man 2 was a financial and critical success, Capcom immediately jumped on making another sequel in the form of Mega Man 3. This story follows a supposedly reformed Wily teaming up with Light to build a giant peacekeeping robot named Gamma, but some rogue robot masters stole the energy components needed for it, and now you need to take them down. Not only that, but also the mysterious Proto Man keeps getting in your way. Who is he? On top of the standard gameplay established from previous entries, Mega Man 3 adds in a handful of features that would continue to be staples in later entries. The slide is a handy tool added to Mega Man's moveset for quick movements or dodging enemy attacks, well, one of the two, which helped add a new layer to boss fights and recognizing patterns. Of course, no discussion about Mega Man 3 is complete without mentioning Mega Man's trusty robot dog, Rush. Rush is available for all sorts of utilities across the game, whether you need to jump a bit higher with Rush Coil, traverse with water with Rush Marine, or fly across dangerous obstacles with Rush Jet. Rush was very handy for getting through these new levels and continued to be a staple of Mega Man gameplay with the previously mentioned abilities. But of course, 3 games was not enough, so Capcom made another one in the form of Mega Man 4. This time, Mega Man has to deal with Dr. Cossack sending his finest robot masters after him, claiming to be the greatest scientist in the world. But not all is as it seems. Mega Man 4 gave us the charge shot from the Mega Buster, where you could hold down the fire button for a more powerful blast. Eddie is also added to Mega Man's supportive group, randomly appearing in stages to give you items to help out. Now, in terms of how the slide and charge shot changed boss fights, we'll have our friend Dustman here demonstrate how not only boss patterns were altered, but how your own moveset can be utilized in them as well. You can now avoid boss projectiles with the slide, and the charge shot is more of a risk-reward kind of thing, where you could just constantly keep firing at them with regular shots, but you could time things carefully with a charge and do more damage. And of course, you can also slide over it when enemies are jumping. Some of these gameplay segments do go on for a while. It's kind of hard for me to cut them down and get the point across, but the charge and slide changed boss design as we knew it from that point forward. And most of the classic entries, with the exception of a couple of them later on, used that formula for boss design. Now, the arrival of the 1990s was a big time in gaming with the arrival of 16-bit systems like the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. Of course, Capcom decided to grace the original NES with yet another Mega Man entry to enjoy, though they would eventually get to 16-bit hardware with the Mega Man X series just a year later. This adventure has Proto Man supposedly wanting to take over the world with his own set of robots, and of course, like the other 4 times, you need to stop him. While the gameplay was not heavily altered from Mega Man 4, 5 did slightly change the radius of the charge shot, as well as adding Beat the Bird, who could be earned by collecting secret letters. Doing so gives you a little bird who homes in on enemies. Mystery tanks were also added as a one-use way to refill both health and weapon energy. Now in 1994, we're moving forward a bit here, but we'll go back for when we talk about the Super Nintendo. Despite most eyes being on upgraded hardware, Capcom gave classic Mega Man one last shot in the form of Mega Man 6, only in the US and Japan for some reason, I think because Nintendo was partnered with them for the distributions or something. I don't know. Anyway, this one follows Mega Man joining the first annual Robot Master Fighting Tournament headed by Mr. X, only for Mr. X to announce that the world that he plans to use all the other contestants for world domination, of course, and now you must go after them. Which isn't that hard of a task with the new Rush Power and Jet adapters at your side, which Rush Power is kind of like an upgraded charge shot with slower movement, and the Jet is more of a jetpack that gives you a higher jump than what Rush Jet normally does. To really emphasize the worldwide contestant feel of this title, the annual Robot Master Fan Design Contest extended beyond Japan thanks to Nintendo Power, and Windman and Nightman here were the international winners. This was the only time that they extended it outside of Japan, from my knowledge, so before we jump to the Super Nintendo, let's talk about Mega Man's handheld adventures on the original Game Boy, the Mega Man World Series. This series, from World 1 to 4, were mostly full of returning bosses from the NES titles, but with some different levels and a new boss known as the Mega Man Killers, these being Anchor, Punk, and Blade. The gameplay was shifted from the NES titles by only offering 4 bosses, then a mid-game boss, and then a second set of bosses. On top of of the entire World Series, World 5, or Mega Man 5, is the most notable, which before we get to that one, the thing I wanted to mention with these was that for the American releases, they have the same titles as their NES counterparts. Which, speaking of Mega Man 5, released in 1994 as the ending to the World Series. It has a completely original cast of robots known as the Star Droids, which were alien robots from space. The story of the century follows Mega Man facing these alien robots with a newly upgraded Mega Arm as the classic Buster is damaged by their leader Terra. Though ultimately in gameplay it functions almost identically, but you can grab some items now. Tango the Cat debuted in this title as well as an important feature that would help the entire series, an item shop. A currency known as P-chips were collected from enemies or hidden in stages and could be exchanged for items. Now also in 1994, there's a lot of stuff this year. Capcom partnered with Ruby Spears Productions to create the Mega Man animated series, simply known as Mega Man. Airing on weekend blocks on various channels, this series ran for 27 episodes and followed Mega Man fighting against Dr. Wily's latest attempt to take over the world with his robot masters and vehicles. Despite high ratings for the show itself, it was canceled due to low merchandise sales. I don't know why, when this intro is incredible. Still my favorite animated incarnation of the entire series. Now, we only have time to see this once. Okay, so now welcome to the Super Nintendo era with 16-bit hardware, with the introduction of Mega Man X and Zero. We're going back a bit to 1993 for Capcom's first attempt at Mega Man on newer hardware known as Mega Man X. This took place 100 years after Rock's battles with Dr. Wily and follows our new protagonist X, the final creation of Dr. Light, as he teams up with his Maverick Hunter friend Zero to face the regime of the evil Sigma who wants a world only for Reploids. Now, Reploids are more advanced machines who are more capable of free will compared to the classic robot masters meant for a singular purpose. So, for example, Gutsman probably wouldn't be able to become a dentist or anything because he was only meant for the specific thing it was built for. Mega Man X was incredibly important in terms of updating and enhancing the gameplay and visual style established in the classic titles. It is full of hidden collectibles to enhance and expand upon your movesets, including heart tanks to increase your health bar, and sub-tanks for refilling health on the fly without worrying about losing it. But the most important changes, other than quick swapping for boss abilities using the left and right triggers, is by far the newly introduced armor upgrades. Hidden in 4 separate stages by Dr. Light, these flip the traditional Mega Man gameplay on its head for a faster and more varied experience. The most notable are the foot parts, which allow X to dash forward for faster movement, and the Buster upgrade, which allows an extra charge for the Buster, as well as charged versions of the boss weapons for the very first time. Now, just 1 year after Mega Man X, Capcom released a sequel in the form of Mega Man X2. This follows just 6 months after the first game, with X leading the Maverick Hunters against a new uprising from the mysterious X-Hunters, who may have details on what happened to Zero. These bosses appear at certain points in the game after beating the first few stage-select Mavericks and are hidden in areas in various stages. If you successfully beat them before it's too late, you get Zero back on your side, but if not, you have to fight him right before the final boss. The armor system was also expanded with a double charge shot as well as dashing in the air. 2 years after Mega Man X2, Mega Man X3 arrived on the Super Nintendo globally, as well as the PlayStation in certain regions. The PlayStation version, I think, was also on the Saturn in some regions as well, included animated cutscenes for the first time, as well as an alternate soundtrack compared to the SNES version. This entry follows X and Zero up against corrupted members of Dr. Doppler's Doppler Town, who were corrupted by a virus from Sigma. On top of the new armor upgrades to play with, Zero was playable for the first time in this game despite being at a very limited capacity. You can even use his saber as X if you go through the right requirements. Now, in terms of what the cutscenes were like, they did not have voice acting just yet, but this was the introduction to the game here. I think when we eventually did get this version of X3 on the X Collection for PS2, they changed the song that plays in this intro, and I would pay good money to have an X animated series in this style. Anyway, nope, hold on, we have other things to do. Of course, we can't forget about the classic games. We also got Mega Man 7 in 1995, and this one was set 6 months after the events of Mega Man 6, with Wily breaking out of prison. And now it's up to you to once again deal with the Doctor's trademark mayhem, as well as the mysterious newcomers based in trouble. Now, some important gameplay changes from Mega Man 7 include the 4-boss structure from the Game Boy titles, where you face 4, have a required mid-game boss, and then face the other 4, and would carry into Mega Man 8. It also carries over the item shop from the Game Boy titles into the main console series for the first time, where you can exchange bolts dropped from enemies with Shopkeeper Auto to purchase an assortment of items such as energy tanks and 1-ups. The item shop will become a staple of the following classic games moving forward. And speaking of moving forward, we are starting with moving on to 3D hardware with the PlayStation and Saturn. In early 1997, the Mega Man series arrived on the incredibly popular Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn with Mega Man 8, just in time for the 10th anniversary of the series. Despite the capabilities for 3D gameplay provided by the PlayStation, Capcom stuck with what worked in Mega Man 7's gameplay and focused on the upgraded hardware for better visuals as well as fully voice-acted and animated cutscenes for the first time. In this entry, Mega Man is tasked with investigating strange energy readings from Wily's latest power source of evil energy and find out what happened to a robot named Duo who crash landed on Earth. Now that voice acting. That's a good question. They tried. Months later, after the release of Mega Man 8, the X series made its critically acclaimed debut on the PlayStation in the 1997 holiday season with Mega Man X4. It also featured the fully voiced animated cutscenes from Mega Man 8, but featured a notable inclusion, the fully playable debut of Zero. Zero relies on close quarters combat with his Z-Saber and learns different saber and mobility techniques from bosses instead of copying their abilities like X would. The story follows X and Zero up against a coup led by the Ripple Force, another group tasked with dealing with Mavericks after a Maverick incident on the Sky Lagoon that the Ripple Force was blamed for. This is a particularly challenging battle for Zero since the Colonel of the Ripple Force is a good friend of his, and Iris, the Colonel's sister, begins to have feelings for Zero and just wants the conflict to end. Now, in terms of how Zero played here, this is in Web Spider's stage. Entirely close quarters combat here. You get a double jump and spinning attack from, I think the double jump was from Split Mushroom, and the spinning was from, I think the spinning was actually part of it. Anyway, different abilities for close quarters combat. You did not collect armor upgrades for this playthrough, which is why some bosses granted things like an air dash instead of new abilities. Now, with the more serious tone of the X series, what did the voice acting provide in this game? Sorry, Iris did not have a good mic. Once again, they tried. I actually have seen some dubs from later Zero actors that they did a fantastic job. Anyways, moving on, just 3 years after Mega Man X4, X5 arrived on the PlayStation with the intention of ending the X series, while KJ and Inafune went off to work on a spin-off series about Zero. There were 3 more games after this. Voice acting and animated cutscenes are removed, but there are plenty of tributes for the classic and X series spread across the game to help establish the intended sense of finality. After a space colony is heading towards Earth and Sigma spreads a new Maverick virus across the planet, it's a race against time as X and Zero team up to stop the colony and defeat Sigma once and for all. But of course, because Capcom loves money, another Mega Man X title was made in the form of the infamous Mega Man X6, and now Inafune had to alter his plans for his Zero spin-off. Full of glitches and infuriating gameplay caused by this game's nightmare system, this title is often regarded as the bottom of the barrel for Mega Man X aside from Mega Man X7. X has to take down the Reploid scientist Gate and stop his Nightmare investigators, as well as the Nightmare virus corrupting Reploids while figuring out what happened to Zero after the end of X5. Now, for how fun Mega Man X6 is, here we go. Great level design, am I right? Or this one where the lights just turn off in the stage. Yeah, it's very fun. Especially when there's hidden collectibles that you can't see. But we did have some nice things from that time period with the Mega Man Legends series. Arriving on the original PlayStation and Nintendo 64 in 1998, Mega Man Legends brought with it 3D action adventure gameplay more comparable to Zelda or Banjo-Kazooie than previous entries. Taking place several centuries after the X series, this follows Mega Man Walnut and the Casket family in search of a power source known as quantum refractors lying in ancient ruins. There is also constant run-ins with air pirates known as the Bones, who also want these power sources. The tone is generally much lighter compared to the X series. Now, in terms of what the 3D gameplay was like, this is what we got here.
Watch out, there's something right in front of you!
You would still collect extra abilities across the game, but most of them are unlocked by completing certain objectives rather than defeating a certain boss. Okay. Hold on. I gotta. Come on. No. Okay. Just a few years after the original, Mega Man Legends 2 arrived exclusively on the PlayStation in 2000. Gameplay from the first was refined to include a lock-on system to tell you when your buster shots are in range of an enemy. And now you can still move while locked onto an enemy. The story follows Mega Man and Brawl continuing their search for quantum refractors when they hear about the Forbidden Island from the companion of Professor Barrel, and together they must gather the keys to the mother lode of quantum refractors before the bombs, as well as learn more about Mega Man Walnut's past. Now, sadly, this was the last title that the Legends series ever received. It was meant to have a third game for Nintendo 3DS, picking up off the ending of this game, but that was canceled, and now the series has been stuck on a cliffhanger for over 25 years. We haven't even gotten a Legacy Collection. No, that's the wrong slide. I pressed the wrong button. Good job, me. Now we'll enter the 2000s mainly on a bunch of Nintendo handhelds, starting with the Battle Network series. In 2001, the team behind Mega Man Legends put Mega Man on the Game Boy Advance, but not as a platformer. Battle Network was a tactical RPG with collection elements and story-wise was separated from the main timeline of platformers. The story across all 6 entries follows 5th grader Len Hikari and his NetNavi, digital avatar, Mega Man EXE as they team up to take down an evil crime syndicate from taking over the world, as well as engaging with other Navi users. Players could collect and trade various battleships across the game to give Mega Man EXE a unique moveset that fit their playstyle or worked best for net battles, the primary form of combat in the series. And while short, there's a bit of net battle gameplay in here. It's primarily on a grid. You use these battleships here for certain abilities, and as soon as health reaches 0, you win. Really simple as that. No. Come on. So, Mega Man 0 is where we're going next on the Game Boy Advance. Of course, this has 0 from the X series. Continues the same playstyle as the X series, but adds elemental abilities that you can put on your base weapons and special attacks if you level them up to a certain point. There's a lot of grinding in this one. These replace the standard weapons gained from bosses. The story follows a reawoken Zero having to deal with an energy crisis where Reploids are being retired by the hands of a copy of X. It doesn't help that this copy has four elite warriors known as the Four Guardians, Fafnir, Harporia, Phantom, and Leviathan, respectively, as well as plenty of new bosses furthering his plans. Now, just a year later, we got the sequel in the form of Mega Man Zero 2, where Zero has to deal with the conquests of Resistance Commander El Paizo, who wants to use the powerful Dark Elf to destroy humans and create a world only for Reploids. This Dark Elf was important to closing the story gap between the Mega Man X and Zero series. Gameplay-wise, it's very similar to the first, except now the elemental abilities are tied to form changes by meeting certain criteria known as EX skills. And then just a year later, they really have a knack for just releasing things a year later. Mega Man Zero 3 arrived on the Game Boy Advance with Zero's most challenging adventure yet, with the villainous Dr. Wile, no relation to Wily, and his powerful Reploid named Omega are hunting down the whereabouts of the Dark Elf from the previous game to seize control of all Reploids. If that wasn't bad enough, Copy X is back, causing chaos as well. There was a huge update in the gameplay department with this one by no longer requiring grinding to obtain new weapon abilities, thank goodness. And now you can simply equip elemental chips to your weapon of choice for weakness damage. And this corner of the Mega Man series concluded with Mega Man Zero 4, where Wile's oppressive regime towards Reploids and humans still stands, and it's up to us with Zero to take him down once and for all. Fortunately, the Ragnarok space colony controlled by Wile is heading on a collision course towards a human settlement in Area Zero, and it's now a race against time to stop Wile and save the settlement. The gameplay remains mostly the same as the third title, but now elemental chips must be crafted with the right materials obtained from instead of just getting them from bosses. Easy mode was also added for a more enjoyable experience. But if that was not for you, there was also a hard and even ultimate world mode for the players who mastered the previous entries. But if you thought this was too easy, don't worry. Oh wait, that game's later. Mega Man X soon made the jump to 3D on the PS2 with Mega Man X7, but didn't quite stick the landing. The game was critically panned for its incredibly slow and clunky gameplay and mediocre voice performances, as well as the fact that you can't even play as X without completing certain requirements in his own game. This entry follows newcomers Axel and Zero going up against a group of vigilantes known as Red Alert, who have grown increasingly violent and want to keep Axel for his unique ability to copy the appearance and abilities of Reploids similar to his size. This ability is not very good in game, though. Now, despite the failure of X7, Capcom gave Mega Man X one last attempt in the form of Mega Man X8. Gameplay returned back to the 2D action from earlier entries, but the character swap mechanic from X7 remained intact, as well as 3D being used sparingly for mini-bosses. There was even customizable armor in this one as well. This epic and sadly final chapter of the X series follows X-Zero and Axel attempting to take down Sigma one last time, as well as dealing with the mysterious Luminae and new generation Reploids with Axel's copy ability. Now, if you thought the previous games were too easy, don't worry, because we have Mega Man and Bass. We got a screen-crunched port of this NES game for the GBA in 2003, and KJ Inafune wanted this game to have plenty of replayability for fans with an SNES. So, of course, this was the most brutal Mega Man experience yet, with plenty of fun trial and error gameplay. During the quest to defeat King and his batch of robots, be prepared to be infuriated many times, with levels clearly designed with the most skilled Mega Man fans in mind. Not even the playstyle of Bass with a Rapid Buster and Dash could make this more bearable, since he wasn't as good against bosses compared to Mega Man. Oh yeah, and there's no energy tanks. Have fun! Though there were also plenty of collections of older titles around this time period as well, like the Anniversary Collection and X Collection. These had some bonuses in there, like some of the arcade games, and the version of X3 on this collection is the PS1 port with the different music. Now, in the mid-2000s, 2007, I believe, also gave us Mega Man ZX. which arrived on the DS in 2006. I was wrong. It took the play style from the Zero series with some added simplifications in the form of the game's biometals. These are this game's version of the elemental attacks, with armor resembling the four guardians from the Zero series, with model F, H, P, and L respectively. The story follows Vent or Ale as they choose to mega merge with Biomodel Model X as they work with the Guardians to stop a rising amount of Maverick attacks and to find out who is causing them. Ale is particularly notable for the first female playable character in a mainline Mega Man title, though role being playable in the Powered Up for PSP slightly predates this, but she was also DLC. Now, in terms of what these biometals do, we have this here. X is your base form that you get at the beginning of the game and plays like previous entries. So by defeating certain bosses, you combine your base model X with different models to do different things. You can basically play as Zero now with model ZX. HX is all about mobility and electric attacks. Model F has adjustable busters that you can actually change the direction of which they fire, so you can have them shoot in an arc there. Model LX is mostly your use this in water power up, but it still does have some outside uses. And Model PX is kind of just a wild card. You can throw a bunch of little shurikens when charged. This is for the Zero Legacy Collection, by the way. So Model A, we're going to look at that for a little bit here. Model A debuted in Mega Man ZX Advent and took place pretty much right after the first one left off. We now play as Amnesiac Reploid Gray or Bounty Hunter Ash, and both became mega merged with the mysterious Model A during their adventure to find out more about their past and the supposed game of destiny being fought with the biometals. Model A can shapeshift into foes it defeats in combat. So you can run around in this game as the Pseudoroid bosses, as well as copy other biometal users. Now, despite the abilities that this one has to Axel, it is not based on Axel in the story in any way or capacity. We also have Mega Man Star Force, which was released after Battle Network wrapped up its run. It still uses the collectible chip idea, which are now mega cards. But we have 3D battles with an extra attack for moving forward on tiles. Story here follows Geostellar teaming up with the alien Omega Sys to become the Star Force Mega Man by utilizing changes in EM waves. Together, they must fight alien threats and solve the mystery of Geo's missing father. And of course, this released in many, many different versions. Now, in terms of how the gameplay for this works, So this one kind of had like a persona type thing where you got these abilities by growing closer to certain NPCs across the game. And the battlefield's kind of like Battle Network, but has a 3D grid to it. And the battle cards are functionally identical to the chips from Battle Network. It also had Wi-Fi battles, which is big because the GBA required a link port. So this, the Brother Band system, at its core, you interact with different NPCs across the game. Whichever ones you grow closer to, you unlock special abilities based on them. And the kind of retool the copying abilities thing the series is known for by having you copy your allies' abilities. Now for the kind of weird downtime period in the 2010s. After 11 years since the last numbered classic entry, classic Mega Man made a return in the form of Mega Man 9 on various digital storefronts like the PlayStation Store and WiiWare, etc. This was developed by the same team behind the Zero games, and they take things back to basics by completely removing the slide and charge shot, as well as going back to an 8-bit visual style. The story follows Mega Man clearing the name of Dr. Light as he was framed for the attacks using his new robot masters. Mega Man 9 is notable for having a playable Proto Man as DLC, as well as the first female robot master in the form of Splash Woman. Now, despite going back to the admittedly restricted 8-bit engine, they did shake things up a bit in terms of boss design. Even though you're still just stuck with the basic toolkit from 2. I do have to skip ahead in this one a little bit because it goes on for quite a little while, but they did change quite a few things. Splash Woman here, for example, can summon enemies, destroyable enemies. They don't drop items, though. They have one boss with spikes in the room, and you have to make sure you don't get caught in his tornado or something. Very interesting boss design in Mega Man 9. And just a few years after that, we got Mega Man 10 on the same digital storefronts, and this was my first entry into the series. It follows Mega Man and a now fully playable Proto Man, teaming up to acquire the cure for the Robo-Enzo virus, causing various robots to go haywire. This is kind of like the prototype of the one that Sigma eventually uses in the X games. It was packed with plenty of extra content as DLC, including the first time base was playable in a numbered entry, as well as a pleasant one, and the Mega Man killers in the Game Boy titles coming back in time attack levels. It's worth noting that Proto Man has the charge and slide from some of the later NES games, but he takes more damage. Now in 2011, Capcom collaborated with Archie Comics for an ongoing Mega Man comic series, written by Ian Flynn of Sonic the Hedgehog fame with artist Patrick Spaziante. 55 issues across its run featured adaptations of the classic Mega Man games up to Mega Man 3, as well as original stories. There were even crossovers with the Sonic titles from time to time. There were a handful of original characters added to flesh out the world and expand upon the pre-existing cast, including Quake Woman here, who slowly regains her personality and humanity after a tragic accident where it was lost. But then something big happened in June 2013. can't show the full trailer here because we're kind of running low on time. But in general, as part of a Nintendo Direct, Mega Man arrived as part of the roster for Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS. He utilizes all sorts of Robot Master weapons from the classic games, like the Metal Blade and the Hard Knuckle, and Rush was added as a recovery move. Mega Man's final smash, Mega Legends, features the opponent getting absorbed into a black hole bomb from Mega Man 9, and then promptly blasted by every iteration of the Blue Bomber in one giant blast. And I picked the perfect video to demonstrate this. We're now in another weird period for the series where we got the Legacy collections, which were compilations of older titles with some added accessibility like save states and rewind, as well as extra challenges and artwork. We've had these for all of the classic series, all of the X series, the Zero and ZX games, and Battle Network, though we haven't got one for Star Force and Legends yet. Now, this was a pretty big deal for the 30th anniversary. We got the reveal trailer for 11, but we're low on time, so I'll sadly have to skip it. But there is some things from 11 I will discuss. As a response to the financial success of the Legacy collections, Capcom produced a new classic title in the form of Mega Man 11. For the first time, they actually used an updated visual style to match the hardware, and the slide and charge return back to the moveset. But you also have the new double gear system designed from a prototype from Wily, which can enhance your movement speed or increase the power of your attacks with the speed and power gears respectively. Now make sure to use these to your advantage because the bosses can also use these.
This is the prototype double gear system we finally developed back at Robot University. If I install this into your circuits, we may be able to stop it.
So this is the speed gear with enhanced movement here. And the power gear gives you more powerful shots, and you can make more powerful special weapons with it. Now, the bosses also have this toy to play with. Like Fuseman here, who uses the speed gear to jump around the room very, very quickly. But you can use yours to slow things down and hit him. And Blockman has the power gear and uses it to basically start a second phase where he's in this giant golem form. At low health, you can use one that fires both a charged shot and slows things down at the same time. Okay. Now, 10 years after the cancellation of the Archie comics series, Mega Man made a return to comics in the form of Udon Studios' Timelines miniseries. These are single-issue stories featuring classic Mega Man, the X series, Zero, ZX, and Legends, whichever of these sells best will become a new ongoing series, so keep an eye for your favorite era at your local comic shop. The dates for these are all wrong because they've all been seriously delayed. The only one I've seen out right now is the classic series one. They've all been pushed back by about a month, so I think we should see X by the end of this month and then the others following that. By the way, Ian Flynn does the Zero one, so worth noting. Despite a new comic series on the way, there's not been much in terms of Mega Man content for 7 years, aside from the occasional collaboration like the Secret Level series or Vegeta's Coffee of all things. There have been no new major games since 2018's Mega Man 11, and no new Legacy Collection since 2023's Battle Network 1. The future seems to be unknown for where the Blue Bomber is headed, but we can still appreciate past releases and patiently wait for something. Apparently, the reason for the delay supposedly is that Capcom is toying with their Resident Evil engine and trying to figure out how to put Mega Man within it, but I think it's because they're still pumping out a bunch of Monster Hunter content. Now, Secret Level, we won't have much time to talk about that. Despite the episode being super short, it was great. I loved the callbacks. So now more than ever is the perfect time to get into the series, thanks to how accessible most of the entries are to the Legacy Collections and wide distribution of 11. Star Force and Legends don't really have any re-releases yet, but pretty much everything else is there. In my opinion, the Legacy Collections is the perfect way to get into the older titles, thanks to easier difficulties, save states, and more. To me, the classic ones are the best starting point, but you could just jump into the X ones without playing them. Keep in mind that you can play any classic entry regardless of story, and 11 was more designed with modern gaming sensibilities in mind and has plenty of difficulty options. If you want faster gameplay and more of a story emphasis, try out X or Zero. If you want an RPG, there's Battle Network. Comic-wise, I'd recommend the Archie series, now being reprinted as hardcovers as Mega Man Adventures under Udon, since it fleshes out ideas from the original games, but the Timeline series isn't that bad either. And that actually wraps us up here. So